In this video, I will share with you a game that I played recently in my over-the-board tournament. This game was a loss. I lost this game against a 1990 rated opponent, a 14-year-old, and I think he is really a chess prodigy. I mean, he's doing very well. I also figured out afterwards that he has a 2500 on chess.com and bullet. So a very strong player. So my opponent played pawn to d4. I played pawn to d5. This game was round number 5. Currently, I have 1.5 out of 4 points, which is not really bad, but it's also not great. I really wish I had done better so far in the tournament. I had the black pieces 2 times in a row. Lost the previous round against Catalan with black. Now I'm playing with black again. So knight f3, flexible move. I don't know yet what my opponent is going to play. So I play knight f6 just to see what they will do. They play pawn to c4. Okay, this might become the queen's gambit opening. So I play my pawn to e6. And what I would usually do is I would usually build this triangle with the pawns. I like calling this the triangle defense because I play this against everything. So that was my plan. But then my opponent played g3. So yes, another Catalan, 2 times in a row, and this is actually the opening that I lose against the most. So I have some big investigation and training to do on how to play against the Catalan. What's the problem really with the Catalan? The problem is that as black, if you play the natural human-looking moves, usually you get a losing position if white plays it well. And for example, if you do play that triangle, which you can play, of course, it's very easy for white to try to play for a small advantage. So that's why before this tournament, I had practiced the entire week on how to play against Catalan. Practice was going rough, but at least I tried. Lost the game against Catalan the round before, so this was my redemption time. Although, as you will see, it did not work out that way. So what did I play? Bishop to e7, bishop to g2, castles, castles, b6. This is something that I have been working on playing against the Catalan. Basically, we want to counter this bishop by also creating a fianchetto bishop. That was the plan. And also play the move c5 so we can counter them in the center. That was really the plan behind his opening. So opponent played knight e5, which I think is one of the best moves. We always need to watch out that the knight does not suddenly infiltrate here. That can sometimes happen if the queen also gets to a4. So we play bishop to b7. The opponent plays knight to c3. And then here we have the choice. You can play knight to d7 or you can play knight to a6. Both of these moves work. In this game I actually messed up. I played knight to a6, and in this situation, it's actually not the best move. It's slightly better to play knight to d7. But it's somewhat confusing here, because sometimes if you don't put the knight there, you lose. Sometimes if you don't put the knight here, you lose. You need to really understand, well, when you should put a knight on a6 or d7. The biggest clue for figuring this out is that if these pawns have been exchanged, it's always knight a6 that you should play. Knight a6. And if the pawns haven't been exchanged, which is the case here, it's usually knight d7 that you should play. The only thing that you could then think is, well, what if they exchange the pawns now? Very important, don't take with your pawn, take with your knight. I'm not going to go super in depth to explain it, but basically that's how you can remember here what to do. If the pawns have been exchanged already, play knight a6, and if your knight is on d7, then never capture back with a pawn. That's the lesson. At least that's the lesson I will need to remember, since I slightly misplayed this as well. And here my opponent played bishop to g5, and this was the moment where I was out of book, as to say. I was no longer in theory. I did not prepare specifically for this move. So bishop to g5 is an interesting move, because this position that we will get here is super interesting if you want to learn about positional chess. In this position, many of my opponent's pawns are on the dark squares, right? They will usually also put this on e3, this is on d4, and then this pawn usually gets exchanged here somewhere. So eventually, almost every pawn my opponent has is going to be on the dark squares. Almost every pawn that I will play is going to be on light squares. At least many of them will be on light squares. Most importantly, the one here in orange. This is my light squared pawn, also my weakest pawn, potentially. So, what my opponent played here is the move bishop g5, which is interesting. because I play h6 and my opponent just takes the knight. And I mean, many chess players would frown upon this and say, what are you doing, White? You are literally giving up a bishop for a knight for no real reason. At least it looks that way. And you don't want to do that in general. Bishops are a little bit more valuable than knights. So my opponent just gives me the bishop for the knight. But I really understood why they did this, because the game prior to this, I had the opposite, actually. My opponent took my bishop with a knight, and I discovered that in these Catalan positions, that dark squared bishop is really a bad piece. Like, my opponent was just happy to say, look, I'll exchange it, and then he said, let me close the structure. Now it's all on the dark squares, and my dark squared bishop is gone. And White is going to try to play a light square control strategy, and they are going to control this d5 square. And all of these pieces can control the d5 square. So I'm already a bit in trouble, since I have this dark squared bishop who cannot help protect the d5 square. So that's interesting. So I looked at this and I considered two possibilities. So one possibility is, let's just give him back the bishop. And that would have probably been the best thing to do. Let's just give him back the bishop. He takes. This is probably the best chance that Black has at a good game. Just give back the bishop, play c6 to strengthen our light squares, and Black is okay. Black is not going to lose this position. This is a playable position. So that was one thing that I looked into. The second thing is, I thought, look, my opponent has already given me the bishop pair, meaning I have the two bishops. Why don't I try to use this to my advantage and try to open the position? And that is why I played the move c5, because if we can exchange some pawns, the position will become more open, and the more open the position becomes, the stronger that these bishops will become compared to the knights. This was actually the wrong plan. Looking back at it now, the best plan would have been, I wish I had played it, just give back the bishop. That's my lesson here. For the next time, just give back the bishop. Because if you play a c5, basically from this moment, I was dead lost. Like the computer says 0.4, which means slight advantage for White. My opponent just played the best move the rest of the game, every single move. So yeah, there was nothing left to do. So this is an interesting position, because it looks like the d5 pawn is dropping. Because there are 1, 2, 3 attackers, 4 if the d pawn moves, 4 attackers on the pawn, and only 1, 2, 3 defenders. So technically, if they take here, eventually with the queen opening up, we lose the central pawn. Of course, they cannot take here because they would lose a knight. So that was part of the reason why I did play c5. It looked like an impossible move, but it is possible. All right. So let's see what my opponent played. They played the exchange. Very typical. I have to take back with my pawn. I think that's the only good option. You could also take back with your bishop, but now we are giving them the light squared bishop. And I just said that the light squares are the most important here. So I took back with my pawn. And then my opponent just played queen b3. And for the rest of this game, all my opponent is going to do is just keep adding attackers to this pawn. So I looked at this and I said, oh no, this is already starting to become problematic. Like, we already have 3 attackers on this pawn. So I looked into a couple of ways of defending here. One way how you can defend this is you can play the move knight c7. I did not play that in the game, but this move helps to protect the pawn. And that's the typical reason why we go to a6. We go to a6 if we feel like we will need to go to c7, where we can then protect our central pawn. That's one of the ways how you can understand this better. That's also why, if the pawn has been exchanged, and we have this target sitting on d5, that's when you reroute the knight and you protect the pawn. So this is probably what I should have played, and I would still be okay. Instead, I played the move c4, and I looked into this move for quite a while, and I thought that this looked like a very interesting move. My plan was just, let's play c4, and if the queen goes somewhere, let's say the queen goes back to where it came from, I could take this, they take back, and I have quite good central control, and I even have the option to play knight b4, heading for the d3 square. So this looked great. I thought c4 was a very good move here. The only thing that probably they could try to do is maybe put the queen here, be a little bit more active, but it's still good for black. You can take, take. The knight can also go to c5 and to d3. So this is really a good position for black. So I played this move c4. I also looked into what my opponent was going to do as a reaction here. And my opponent just moved back to the d1 square. Okay. So then I looked at this again and I said, okay, I have this plan. I could exchange the bishop for the knight, which we just talked about, give the bishop for the knight, and then try to infiltrate to the light square. That would be a good strategy. And the other thing that I tried to do is maybe I could play knight c7. I mean, if I play knight c7, I protect this central pawn. And I looked into this and eventually I decided to just play this move knight c7 instead of the move knight to b4 and exchanging because I really wanted to keep my bishop pair. That was my plan in this game. I wanted to keep my bishops on the board. That was actually the wrong plan. I should have captured and then just improved my knight. Why is the capture necessary if you want to improve your knight? Well, because you are not getting to d3 as long as this knight is here, because this knight is backwards protecting d3. So this was really the plan that I should have gone for. Instead, I played knight c7, and this move looks perfectly okay, and it is wrong because of an insane move sequence that my opponent can play. So my opponent completely surprised me here. He played the move knight takes c4. Knight takes c4. And at first sight, you might think, well, obviously he was going to play that move. It's a winning tactic because it takes a pawn and I cannot recapture. Recapturing would be a big blunder because you would just lose your bishop. So it looks like they have won a pawn. But I had seen this and I thought that this move was impossible for them because if they play this, black has the simple move bishop a6. And white is in trouble because this knight, if it moves, they lose the rook. If they protect it with a pawn, it's also not great for them. I could take the knight, and if they take my rook, now I'm winning back the bishop as well. So we get 2 pieces in exchange for the rook, which would be great. Whatever else they do, let's say they put the queen there or something, they always lose. So I looked into this and I said, well, this is just completely losing for white. So at this moment, I thought this opponent must have just had a tactical oversight here. This move doesn't work. So my opponent looked at this maybe for about 30 seconds or so. And then he played the move knight d2. And yes, this is a brilliant move according to chess.com. Knight to d2. And I really thought like, what's going on here? I take your rook, right? And then he takes back with the king. And then I looked at this position for a while, like semi being confused what had just happened. And then I realized that I was probably playing a genius chess player and not an amateur who just blundered his rook. Because this is actually a brilliant exchange sacrifice, meaning they sacrifice the rook for a pawn and a bishop, but it's a good sacrifice for them. Because I looked at this position and I suddenly realized, wait a minute, I have so many problems on light squares. This, the weak pawn, this square, this square, this square. There are so many light squares in this position, and many of them are weak. Especially my pawn in the center is a problem. It's a light squared pawn. It's isolated. And I don't have my light squared bishop anymore. And here I also realized my opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 pieces, you could say, that can attack. And all of them can attack a light square. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that can defend the light square. This bishop cannot defend the light square. It's a dark squared bishop. So here I realized, wait a minute, this is like the most genius thing that I have seen in a long time. They literally sacked that rook on purpose so that now I have a light squared weakness. And it's incredibly difficult to play this game with black. So I started by playing queen to d7. Because I thought, like, look, I'm weak on the light squares. Let's just control some light squares by making my queen a light squared piece. It's better than having my queen being a dark squared piece, right? So a light squared piece, at least I have some more control. My opponent played queen to b3, which apparently is slightly wrong, but it makes sense to me. They are attacking this d5 square. So I already started protecting because I need to. My opponent will just keep throwing attackers at this pawn. Rook to c7. Okay, and here I thought, like, what should I even do as black? Because if the rest of the game, all I do is protect my pawn, if I never counterattack, I will just simply lose. That's how chess works. If you don't have your own plan, you lose. So I was trying to find a plan, and the only plan that I could come up with here was pushing pawns on the queen side. That's the only thing I could really do. If I push these pawns on the queen side, I can get a little bit of counterplay, which was actually the correct plan. It's the best plan for black. I should have even played b5 immediately, and then a5, and just stormed the pawns up the board. Instead, I played rook b8, and I think it's really this move that actually ends up losing me the game eventually. Rook b8, knight f3, b5, I'm starting my pawn storm. Knight e1, it looks like white is doing nothing, but that's not true. They are rerouting their pieces so that they can attack the light squared pawn. a5, knight d3, and here I had realized that there was a problem, which is that I want to push both of these pawns, right? That's the plan. I was just pushing on the queen side, trying to push back his pieces, trying to gain space. Because if I can get his pieces to retreat, I still have a chance that I don't lose this game. But I realized here that I had messed up. Because if I play b4, I give him this square for the knight. The knight eventually just goes to the c5 square, and that's not really great. If I play a4, which I played in the game, the queen goes back, and now I want to play the move b4. But I realize b4 doesn't work here anymore, because this pawn is not protected well enough. It's only protected once, and it's attacked twice. So had I not moved my rook to b8, let's actually show this. Let's go back. Had I not moved my rook to b8, had I instead pushed the pawn immediately, we would get this, which looks very similar, but the big difference is we have this move that we could play, pawn to b4. And in case they also retreat, now black is winning, because look at these white pieces. They are all passive, and we have gained so much space. But in my game, after the move a4, I realized, oh, I messed up. There is no pawn to b4, so my attack doesn't really work. And by doing all of this, I even gave them another square for the knight. A square that leads to the d5 pawn. So black is losing. Black is just completely losing here. So here there is literally nothing you can do with black to keep a level game. I tried, but it did not work. I played to move queen to f5, which after I made the move, I instantly realized that I had just blundered, because white can take the pawn, and after I take back, they take my knight. So they just win a pawn. I had completely missed this, but anything else that you play for black is also losing. My opponent, I don't know if they didn't see it or they just didn't care about it. They played knight to b4, attack the weakness. And I'm getting in trouble. Like, this pawn will be attacked a million times, and I just don't have enough light squared defenders. Rook d7, protecting my knight, making some space for the other rook as well. And here my opponent played the move queen to f3, which wins the game, but there were better moves. What I realized after I had played rook to d7 is that again I have light squared problems. This time it's this light squared diagonal that is weak. My opponent, I thought they were going to play bishop f3 and then just bishop g4. Yeah, what do I do? Like, my light squares are problematically weak in this position, but they didn't see it. They played queen f3, leads to a trade, but it's still horrible for black. Like, all I can do is pray and hold on to this pawn and just hope that it doesn't collapse. But that's not really a viable chess strategy, right? If all you can do is hope that your position doesn't collapse. Currently, yes, I have 3 defenders on this pawn. My opponent has 3 attackers on this pawn. So you could say that I am holding on currently and that I am surviving this. But the things are going to fall apart. Like, these knights have so many infiltration squares into my positions as well. That's the first problem. Then the eventual problem a little bit later in the game is that my opponent will just infiltrate with their pieces and my light squares are going to collapse. Knight c6, I have to move my rook. Doesn't actually it matters a lot where you move it. Almost every single square loses immediately, straight up to tactics. I think, like, for example, rook a8 loses, I think, because of bishop g4, and if you move your rook, you lose this bishop. So I had to play rook e8 so I could hold on to my bishop. And then my opponent just calmly played bishop e2. Well, now I'm losing this pawn. This pawn is attacked twice and only defended once, and there was nothing I can do. So as was expected. My light squares are just literally collapsing. All of my light squares are weak. You might think, well, why did you put more pawns on the light squares then? Well, the goal was, of course, not to end there, but to eventually play b4 and even a3 and end on the dark squares. That was really my plan. So from this moment, the game is over. It does not matter what you do. The computer finds the move a3, which is quite interesting. I played it, but one move later, a3, as a final attempt to do something. Because if white takes, we take, and now the rook is under attack. And if the rook moves, we get to push the pawn to a dark square just in time. But of course, white doesn't need to take. If they just push, which works, the knight is protecting this, we are losing. There is nothing that we can do. So in the game, I played rook to d6, like, what should I have done? I'm completely losing. Knight takes, and this is game over. Take, pawn a3, pawn takes a3. I still tried it. I thought if I had to do something, let's just double up their pawns. But the problem is, black, you are just behind the full pawn, and the pawn is on the edge of the board that can just be pushed to promotion. The promotion square is a light square. This is game over. Like, there is nothing left. I did continue this game for about 20 more moves, because there was actually still one way how black could achieve a draw. We have the opposite colored bishops, meaning we both have a bishop of a different color. That means that if I exchange this rook, and if I sack my rook, preferably for a knight and a pawn, let's say we do manage to achieve that, my rook for a knight and a pawn, if I could make that happen, then the position is probably going to be a draw, because we have an opposite colored bishop position with only with actually no pawn difference. I think, wait, we would have a pawn difference, right? They would have 6 pawns and I would have, yeah, they would have 5 pawns and I would have 4 pawns. So it would be opposite colored bishops with 1 pawn difference. That's a draw. But that's a miracle if that works. Like, will he exchange rooks with me? Will I be able to sack the rook for the knight and a pawn? Very unlikely. So I tried to play. So I had to save my bishop. If I lose that bishop, my drawing chances are over. But what do you do? Like, there's nothing we can do. And he just literally pushes the pawn all the way up the board. There's nothing I can do. He brings the king closer. And I realized there is nothing. Like, I have to protect this promotion square, and he is eventually going to promote. There is nothing I can do. So I tried to play a little bit on the king side here, but none of it really matters. Eventually, I decided, look, let's at least try, right? Let's try to sack my rook for the knight, win the pawn, but it's not enough, right? It's not enough. I said I had to sacrifice my rook for a knight and a pawn. Here I just sacrificed my rook for a knight, not a knight and a pawn, which means that now it's literally 6 pawns. 6 pawns versus 3 pawns. There's no way that I will be getting a draw, even if these rooks get exchanged. Like, imagine if I do this check and my opponent plays this, which actually would blunder a pawn, but okay. Let's say I take this, white still wins. They just have too many pawns. Like, for me to draw this game, I think it would need to probably go a little bit like this, and then still this is probably just winning for white. I would need to win more pawns. So there was literally nothing I could do. I tried to play on, just being numb, basically. I did not even understand how this happened. Like, my opponent played a perfect game. Just kept playing. But eventually, right, I tried everything I could. Like, the final tricks, maybe some check discovery, win something. But yeah, my opponent is not going to blunder this. And now he just has 2 passed pawns, connected passed pawns. And that's the game. So a very tough loss. There are some very minor things I could have done better, but I think my opponent just played an incredibly good game. Yeah, if I had played some small things differently, maybe there was a chance, but this game was incredibly difficult. So with that, I am 1.5 out of 5. Not great. 2 more rounds to go. So let's hope that we win those so that we can still redeem ourselves.